Good morning. It's Wednesday morning, middle of the week. Can be a tough time, can't it? Just to kind of keep going and get through the week. Although our weeks have become so crazy, they're not like they used to be. But I hope that this helps, because I want to lead you a little bit further in the book Life Together by Dietrich Bonhoeffer, as we're going to be continuing on Sunday that series called Life Together. The last 2 weeks we've looked at Sunday gatherings. First, the day together, what God has for us when we come together on Sunday. And then last Sunday we looked at the day alone, how you can use your alone times to prepare for that gathering on Saturday night, Sunday morning. And by the way, tonight, Wednesday night, we're going to be diving a little bit deeper into the subject of being alone and those alone times. So hope you'll join us for that. But this Sunday, we're going to make a transition into the next chapter, which is Christian ministry. Now, when you hear the word ministry, different things come to your mind. You have an idea of what ministry means. And you might be surprised, though, at Bonhoeffer's take on it. If you have the book, you've maybe already read it or will be reading it. It's interesting that in that chapter he begins with a scripture from Luke chapter 21, or maybe it's 22, I can't remember. But it is after the Passover meal that Jesus has with his disciples, the foot washing, and Jesus has just revealed to his disciples that there is someone sitting at the table with them who will betray him. And no one knows exactly who it is. And so he kind of hints that there's someone sitting there. And the disciples look at each other. You remember the picture. They look at each other like, who is it? Is it you? Is it you? And then the scripture that Bonhoeffer begins with follows that one, where the disciples flip the conversation to talking about who's the greatest. They have a dispute among themselves as to who is the greatest. And Bonhoeffer says that that's the seed, that desire to be the best, to be better than someone else in the church is in every church. It's a seed that is in every church because it's in every man, every human. Our desire to see ourselves as better than someone else. And Bonhoeffer points out that that's the very opposite of ministry, which is a word that means literally service. Jesus came not to be served, but to serve and to give his life. And so Christian ministry means that we follow that example and aim to serve and to lift others up and to serve each other rather than worrying about who's the greatest or whether we're better than someone else. And as I was reflecting on this myself, I thought of a man who will always be in my mind, in my personal history, the example of ministry. His name was Fred Bogannon. He was Lebanese. The first church that I pastored in Windham, New Hampshire. There's someone like him in every church. He was the first one there on Sunday mornings. He had no official role, no title. He was a man maybe in his 70s, and he'd be the first one there on Sunday mornings, straightening the hymnals, making sure everyone had a hymnal, just tidying up and waiting for people to come. The other thing I remember about Fred is that he barely spoke. His words were very few, and the most you would usually get out of him when you talk to him would be a smile or a shrug. And aside from that, it was not easy to get him to talk. I remember one night, it was about dinner time, and he had been talking to us, or we had been talking to him about Lebanese food because we weren't that familiar with it. So, lo and behold, that week on one evening about dinner time, he came with, I guess, what would be the equivalent of a poo-poo platter. Only with Lebanese food from Bishop's restaurant in Lawrence, very famous restaurant that he frequented. And he drove up in his car, and he brought in a poo-poo platter and walked away. and drove off. Just such a nice gesture. That's who he was. He was there always. He appeared. He did something good, and he walked away. And that was Fred. That was his ministry. I remember another time when we had him over. It was Christmas time, and we had our kids were very young, and so we invited Fred over because he was alone. He lived alone, to come and trim the tree with us. So he came, and I don't remember him saying a word the whole time, but he was smiling the whole time, and he was occasionally taking ornaments giving them to the kids and having them put them on the tree, and then Fred would take a seat, as I remember, just sit there and smile. He just enjoyed himself. That's what ministry is, according to Bonhoeffer. It's laying aside the question whether you're better than someone else, or whether someone else is not as good as you. Just kind of serving, just kind of being there and enjoying each other. It doesn't sound very complicated, and it isn't. And we're going to be looking at that on Sunday, what it means to minister and how you can minister, how you can be a part of the church through ministry. So anyway, that'll be fun, and it'll be fun tonight also as we come together and talk about Sunday's message on the day alone. You have the questions in the flock note this morning and on Monday, so you'll be receiving an invite to that. It's at 7 o'clock tonight, and hope you'll be there. You won't regret it, believe me. We had a great discussion last week, so come and join us at 7 o'clock. God bless.